And
Hey, Daddy, this is the man of the champions, Bill Fonzie Alfonso, giving a shout out to something else. Something else, Daddy.
This is Nickel Matara, Great Warrior Wolf, and you are listening to Something Else.
I'm Tony Cini, and you're listening to Something Else.
Hey everybody, it's Rich Palladino, the voice of New England, and you are listening to Something Else with Arya.
degenerates and reprobates, welcome to episode number 171 of Something Else. Feast your hair holes on this week's episode as we take a look at Mid-South Wrestling and World Class Championship Wrestling from March 3rd, 1984. My name is Arya, and joining me, as always, is the Fritz von Erich to my Fritz von Erich. It's Trae. Trae, sometimes we both need a Bill Mercer in our lives to keep us on track. How are you doing today?
Not too bad. How's it going?
I can complain, but that's what we call the pre-shows for when I like to
Ah,
complain sometimes.
yeah.
By the way, can we just say fuck leap year? Um, thanks to leap year being a thing in 1984 and not in 2025, we're now a day off. And believe me, the thought of just moving this show to Monday has crossed my mind just because I like the whole, 41 years ago today thing. But yeah, we're back to 41 years and one day ago because stupid 1984 has a stupid leap day. So we ended up a day off now.
Well, if we wait enough years, we'll be back around.
Yes, in 3 years, when we're fucking watching UWF in 1987, getting ready for Jim Crockett to buy the company, we'll be caught up to the right day.
It works like that, does it? It's we'll just be 2 days off the other way
No,
because it doesn't go
no.
backwards.
Yeah, but we'll pick up a day. So it will, because like right now we're a day ahead. Because this shows we're talking about a show from March 3rd on a show on, and this show's going to drop on March 4th. So in 3 years, when we in real life hit 2028 and hit a leap day,
Aria, Aria,
it's going to
Aria,
move.
Aria, Aria. I'm too high for
Trey.
this. I'm too high for
Okay,
this. I
great.
can't do this.
Okay, so we can talk about drugs on this show. You're probably not going to yell at you're not going to yell at me after the podcast for making a joke about drugs, are you?
Well, I'll yell at you if you don't laugh well enough at my jokes about drugs.
Okay. So since I just got done being yelled at off the air for making this joke on tomorrow's show, um, apparently we smoked the good crack last week because I don't know why, but our latter two shows at the end of the last week, bumped up in the listenership numbers. The Thursday Smoky Mountain show, and then the late Friday night / early Saturday morning Omnomni live watch along. I don't know what the hell happened, but people are actually
I
clicking on those links.
I have no idea why. I
Yeah. So my theory is we smoked the good crack last week, and don't ever mention smoking crack to Cindy unless you really, really need it.
that's it sounds exhausting.
Yes. Yes, it was. By the way, the thought that somebody might be listening to this show nowadays has not made me not complain on the air. So I guess there's that now. Um,
Uh I feel like if we stop doing what we're doing, they're gonna stop listening. So
and hey, you know, maybe nobody's ever going to listen to these shows. Maybe the 100 people who've now listened to those two shows last week have had more than their fill. But you know something? I would rather have 10 people listen to this show and us be us than, have 100,000 people listening and us being a sanitized, watered down, you know, no talking off subject show. Like, I don't know, like there are a lot of podcasts out there, and most of them, to the best of my knowledge, tend to stay on topic. And so I think for whatever reason, it sets us apart. We cannot
I
stay on topic no matter what.
I just think that whatever people are getting out of this, we should ought to keep giving it to them.
Yes, yes, indeed. So, what do you think of John Cena's heel turn?
It's neat. It's interesting. I haven't seen it yet because it's really not a big deal because I haven't had time to watch it yet anyway. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm interested. I'm a lot more interested in the idea of Cody versus Cena at WrestleMania now than I was before.
Yeah, I can honestly tell you, and I don't think we talked about it on the show. I was like, yeah, Cody versus Cena. It's like that. It feels very ho hum. Like I get it. It's Cena going for his 17th world title, but it's like ho hum. But like now this,
Hmm.
you know, it's a new twist. I'm liking it, and I guess we'll see how this goes. I will say that I remember a decade ago when everyone was bitching, I mean, more than a decade ago, because Cena's been a babyface since 2003. You know,
Hmm.
people were whining and complaining in 2006, 2007, 2008. Why didn't Cena turn heel? And especially when we got to 2009, 2010, and like he's been booed to death for 5 years at this point, and he's still a babyface. Why would he turn heel? Because what could he possibly say that would make it make sense? And as much as I'm going to bury Triple H for putting himself over, I have more confidence in Triple H coming up with a way to make this make sense than I would in the old man doing it.
Do
You
you
know,
think do you think that Vince like realized that he didn't know how to get a baby face over anymore? So that's why he would not let Cena turn?
well, he wouldn't let Roman turn forever. Honestly, it wasn't until the story going around, whether or not this is entirely true, who knows? The story was, after that dog food angle with Roman and Baron Corbin, Roman basically went to Vince and demanded that he let Paul Heyman book him. And, Vince acquiesced and Paul created the Roman Reigns that is now, you know, one of, if not the biggest babyface in the company.
Yeah,
And
you're right.
yeah, and it's like, because yeah, he was stuck. Like, and that was the problem. Like, there will never be another John Cena. John Cena was able to thrive despite the vocal part of the crowd hating his guts. And so when the same vocal part of the crowd turned on Roman Reigns, what's Vince to think? To be perfectly honest, what was Vince supposed to think that the same people who booed Cena while Cena was selling shit tons of merchandise and being unquestionably the biggest star in the company, what was he supposed to do when now the same people are booing the shit out of Roman? To be honest, you know, it almost made too much sense.
You're making some good points there.
Yeah. All right. So it's it's that week on this show.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Um, we're going to talk about the David Von Erich Memorial Show, and it is even before we get to the famous moment that we all knew was coming, it is a weird show. And I mean, we'll get to it later, but like it was, in many ways, it was a perfect show, at least for the first 35 minutes or so. And in some ways, it's like, huh, like this is a little wacky, we'll say. And I did cry. And it wasn't because Bill Watts, or not Bill Watts, that would have been wacky, but it's not because Fritz von Erich, pissed me off that I was in tears out of anger. No, I was legitimately crying out of sadness at one point during that show. And I'll bring it up, obviously, when we get there, because, what else would be the point of this show if I didn't mention what brings me full emotion to tears. But we'll save that for the main event like we usually do and talk about Mid-South Wrestling. And we start the show with, well, big news is a stretch of the phrase, but we have a new logo.
Oh,
Did you
I
know?
didn't even
Did
notice.
you notice? You didn't
I
notice the
didn't even
beginning of the
notice. No,
show, at the
I
beginning
uh,
after the opening credits, when it normally just says Mid-South Wrestling in block letters, it now has the white logo with the outline of what looks like Bob Roop holding up a title belt with Mid-South Wrestling written around it. You did not notice that?
I usually don't start paying attention until we're looking at the desk because it's the same thing
Well,
every week. Like, why am I? I've seen it. I've seen it dozens of times. Why am I watching that every fucking week?
because it's not a black screen with block letters anymore. It's a white screen with an outline of, I'm pretty sure it's
Hmm?
Bob Roop. It, has the body shape of Bob Roop holding up a title belt.
Well, I was
Like,
either typing or petting my cat or something.
well, I approve of at least one of those things. So new logo, but it's going to take a while for it to change. Like, you know, they're not at a new set yet. That's still to come. They're still at the old plain blue backdrop with the words Mid South Wrestling written on it. But Bill Watts is back from David's funeral, and he's joining Bill Mercer. Bill Mercer, Jesus Christ, he's joining Boyd Pierce, who is
What a
not Bill
team that would
Mercer.
be.
This is not Bill Mercer. This is not Fritz von Erich. This is Boyd Pierce, and it's Bill Watts. Let's go to them right now for the intro of the show. We have a bit of a lengthy intro, but we're going to cut it in half and talk about the first half and then the second half.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Mid-South Wrestling. I'm your host, Boyd Pierce, and we have a lot of exciting action. Tag team, the Rock and Roll Express is here. Also, the controversial manager, Jim Cornette, has his Midnight Express on the scene. And we move into the 5th week of the Mid-South Television Tournament. This week's big battle, Magnum TA in the ring against Krusher Darsow. The man to tell us about it and bring us an update on the tournament thus far, an expert commentator and also the president of Mid-South Sports, Bill Watts. Bill?
Well, thank you, Boyd. A lot's been happening, and we've been delinquent in that we promised you a couple of weeks ago when you showed you that very awesome new match, the Coal Miners match, which Hacksaw Jim Dugan had originated against Krusher Darsow in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where Dugan won the bout but was badly injured when the Russian Alliance jumped him with the Coal Miners glove later. We told you we'd give you an update about his injury, and the problem is we haven't been able to find Hacksaw Jim Dugan. He has just disappeared. We don't know what's happened. We know he was badly injured, but it shouldn't have been an injury that would keep him incapacitated this long. So evidently he's really had to look inward to himself and just see what he's going to do about his career. The North American title situation is really up in the air, but first let's get to the Mid-South Television Championship Tournament for $10,000. This is the 5th week, and today we have Magnum TA against Krusher Darsow. That should be an awesome match. Next week, Terry Taylor in the 2nd round will be against Masayo Ito. The 7th week, the Junkyard Dog will wrestle the winner of today's bout between TA and Darsow. So this tournament is rapidly moving on toward the 9th week, which will be the championship week for $10,000 and an Olympic-type medal and representing Mid-South as the television champion. But now, again, the North American title situation with some astounding news that Mid-South had selected Magnum TA as the #1 contender, but it brought some very surprising results. Wrestling 2 and TA have been under a tremendous amount of pressure with their title situation for the tag titles with the Midnight Express, but I think it's boiled over in another direction, a new direction. Jim Ross standing at ringside now, ready to interview Magnum TA.
All right. So before we go to JR and TA, we have the intro of the show, including today the final first round match in the television tournament for a medal and $10,000, as it's the 5th round match with Magnum TA versus Krusher Darsow. And then we find out that we've been delinquent in getting an update about the Jim Duggan situation, and that Jim Duggan has disappeared. And and for like a second, I'm like, wait a second. It's 1984 and someone's disappearing off of a local TV show. But no, he's not, he doesn't go to Vince for like 3 years. So it's not that kind of disappearance. This is weird, wacky, wild storyline disappearance instead. And then
Yeah.
we look at the bracket for the television tournament. And do you ever notice every time they show the poster board with the brackets, the video gets distorted?
Yeah. I I don't know if it's distort or is it just because it's trying to focus on text and it's like there's only so much you can do with 40-year-old footage.
My thought is too, it's not like on-screen graphics don't exist because at the end of every
Yeah,
segment, we get an on-screen graphic talking about what's happening next. They could
I don't
literally
know.
create a graphic for this tournament. Although I'd
Okay,
love to
you're
see.
right. You're
I'm sorry.
right. But for a studio wrestling, and this isn't technically a studio, but you know what I mean. It's
Yeah,
that vibe.
yeah.
Like I think that's kind of a charming way to look at the tournament.
I mean, it is cute. It's definitely if honestly, hell, I can tell you, I've used a lot of poster board and a lot of notebooks in my life, writing out tournament brackets for my own wrestling promotions when I was a kid and whatnot.
Yeah,
So hey,
yeah.
I like to think I got that idea off Bill Watts. I still think it's hilarious we're doing a 10-man tournament just because it's like, why? Like we couldn't get two more people in there to make it 12. We couldn't take two people out. We had to have 10. It's like we
Uh,
and they show the
12
close up
wouldn't
of
have
the
been
bracket.
better. 12 wouldn't have been better. It should have been 8 or 16.
But if you had 12, you could do four people get a first round bye, and you have the four first round matches, and the winners of those take on the four people who got the bye. This, it's like, you,
Stop
you,
trying to make me do math.
okay, but you get this situation where you get a close up of, and then the Junkyard Dog in his next match on screen, it says Junkyard Dog bye. But that's not it. What it really is, because the winner of last week's match, Butch Reed, in theory, he should be wrestling Dog next, but instead he's getting a bye to take on the winner of the Masao Ito Terry Taylor match. And so it's like they're crossing lines in the middle to put Butch Reed up towards the top. You know that you know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense stylistically. Like
Uh,
I don't know. Like I
I
and it's funny
I
because
didn't
like
know. I
I
didn't.
guess it's a Bill Dundee thing because Bill Dundee's booking, but WCW under Bill Watts, actually no, it wasn't under Bill Watts. It was before Watts got there. It was when Dusty was still. I was gonna say they did a 10-man tournament for the U.S. title when Sting won it, but that was '91, so that was still Jim Herd, Dusty Rhodes. So, all right, I can't blame Bill Watts for every dumb idea ever. I usually
I
blame
didn't
Vince
even.
Russo for all the dumb ideas.
I didn't even know the Junkyard Dog was by.
You know, there's a lot of by things I am, but lingual is not one of them. Wait, did I just mean to say that?
Oh, that may actually have been the best moment of Triple H's career.
It's the like, and there was like the dramatic pause where like JR and Lawler are just thinking like, did you just say what like? Do you know what you just said? Kind of thing. It's like, wait,
Yeah.
did I mean to say that? What do you think he meant by that? Like, at the end of the day, because what the reason why is because China, it was King of the Ring '98. Ken Shamrock was wrestling The Rock in the finals of the King of the Ring, and China was on was on Spanish commentary. And JR asked Triple H if he spoke Spanish or if he knew what China was saying or something like that. And that's why I said there's a lot of bi things I am, but lingual isn't one of them. It's like there
Yes.
really isn't anything else he could have been talking about, you know? It's nice that Triple H to come
I
out of the closet. You know, hey,
I mean
he's one of the first celebrities to come out of the closet.
I've always suspected that Shawn was at least hetero flexible.
He thought he was bi-curious, which is the more
I have a
common way of
theory.
saying what you're trying to
I,
say.
I have a theory that one of these days I'll be fucked up enough to say, and then we'll get canceled, and people will be outside of my house with torches and pitchforks.
What are you going to say on the show that hasn't already been said?
Just something pretty fucking out there that I've never heard anybody express an idea of before. But
I'm
yeah,
afraid to ask. Is this an actual thought, or is this like you're just worried that someday you may say something like that?
no, this is an actual thought that I have that I should probably never say.
All right. Well, DM me if you ever want to actually say it, because I'm kind of
Okay,
curious.
all
Um,
right.
but it's funny because I always laugh because, you told me that you read the previews I post every week for these shows because you forget whether or not you actually say some of this stuff or if we actually talk about some of the stuff we talk about or it's just a fever dream. And
Yeah.
Triple H and Shawn Michaels potentially being bi-curious is definitely going to make this week's episode description. Um, so
Excellent.
So let's go now to JR and TA. And as recall from last week, TA was named the number one contender to Junkyard Dog's North American title. And then Mr. Wrestling 2 was a bitter old man. So he slapped TA, and TA decided that this was not worth it and ripped up the contract for the North American title match. So let's go to Magnum TA. Oh, by the way, Magnum TA said that he was never going to allow anyone to slap him again. That's kind of important to keep in mind during the next 4 minutes.
Yeah.
We're here at ringside with Magnum TA. And Magnum, the last several weeks, a lot of controversy has surrounded the North American Championship. Just 2 weeks ago, we found out that the Mid-South Board of Directors voted you the #1 contender for the Junkyard Dogs title, the North American Championship. Then last week here on Mid-South Wrestling, what we thought was going to be a very historic occasion turned into a very chaotic occasion when the signing for the North American Championship match, the altercations you had with your coach and friend, we all thought, and still think, most of us, the confrontation between you and Mr. Wrestling 2. I know that since that time you've torn the contract up. We saw that on national television, but you've given a lot of thought to the North American title. We've talked about this. I know now that you have some things that you'd like to relate to the fans regarding the North American Championship.
Well, Jim, I'd like to tell you and all the fans, I've had some time to reflect, over the actions that have taken place, and time to think about my own thoughts on the matter. I'm a young man. I'm a very lucky man. I've had Wrestling 2 as my coach, and through his guidance, I've come to the heights of professional wrestling. I'm now one half of the tag team champions here in Mid-South, and youth is something I have on my side. Wrestling 2 is a man of many years, a man of great distinction, but time is not something that's working for him, it's working against him. Being as the board found me suitable to be the #1 contender, I feel like I will get this opportunity again. But what I want to do at this time, if it means so much to my coach Wrestling 2, I'm going to stand back and I'm going to give him this title shot.
Right. Going to give it.
Wait a minute, man. Hey, wait a minute. TA, you don't give me nothing, man. You understand that? You don't give me anything. I picked you up from the garbage and made you the man that you are today. Yeah, you're walking around with one half of the title, and yet you stand there, you tell me you're going to give me something. Man, get yourself in the ring right now, and I'll prove to everybody right here on national TV who is #1. I told you, I've got nothing but respect for you, Coach. I already told you I'll give you the title shot. Hey, man, you don't give me nothing. I told you, you don't give me anything. I can beat you. I can beat Junkyard Dog just the same way. That's why I got the title. You understand that? I'm going to get the opportunity for that. You don't stand here and tell me you're going to give me anything. Coach, I'm not going to wrestle you. I told you I'll give you the shot. Let me tell you something. The most humiliating thing that any one man can take, I told you once this man ain't got no guts. He's gutless. Otherwise, he'd get in the ring right now and we'd finish it right here and prove to everybody that I am #1. And the most humiliating thing is being slapped just like that. You understand that? You got any guts? Get in the ring. Let's finish it right here and now.
Let's wait just a moment.
Coach, I'm not going to wrestle you. That's the last word.
Mr. Wrestling 2, now we have got a very controversial situation right here.
Hey, listen,
I don't want to butt in, excuse me. But, 2, I've known you a long time. We go back to Georgia together. We've wrestled each other. We've wrestled together. What's getting into you? Are you losing your whole focus? Don't you understand what's happening? This kid who you signed on as coach, you've got him exactly where your goal was to get him. You've taken him right up where the directors have said he's the #1 contender. You should be happy and that you've done such a great job with the kid. Instead, you're getting all bent out of focus, and you're trying to humiliate and embarrass him on national TV. You're slapping this kid, and you're thinking that he's walking away from you because he's afraid. He's not afraid of you. He's got a quality that's going out in this country. He's loyal. And the only reason, that's right, and the only reason he's walking away is because, I'll tell you what, I think he can beat you.
Well, I don't think so.
I think he can beat you, and he's walking away so he doesn't have to embarrass you.
I think he's gutless. I think he's gutless, and if you don't believe it, take him in the ring right here. I'll dust him right here, right in front of everybody, at any given time. And if you don't think that's good enough, you know, let me tell you something, Bill Watts. I can take any man in a tag team situation and beat these expressive. You understand that? Any given time, I can take anybody. It doesn't make any difference. Did TA?
You know, you'd start to compare yourself with somebody a lot greater than you, because nobody can make somebody what they're not. I think right now, let's go back to Boyd Pierce and go to a commercial break.
As we try to slow things down and get things in perspective, we'll be right back after this important message.
Okay then. Mr. Wrestling 2 is a senile old man. Like, seriously, what at this point is his character other than senile old man? Dick is a good, like literally, what does he want? He's went on TV now for weeks whining because Magnum TA got a title shot instead of him. And then so Mr. Wrestling 2 was like, "Okay, I'm sorry. It's not worth it. Have my title match." Like, "You motherfucker, how dare you give me a title match? I will wrestle you right now." Notice he keeps threatening to wrestle people every week and then he doesn't actually wrestle them.
But if he
Like
were
last week,
alive right now, sorry, go ahead.
if he was alive right now, he'd be threatening to wrestle me. And then I'd accept the challenge and it wouldn't happen.
I was gonna say that he'd be yelling about DEI, but yeah, yours is good too.
Uh, we're trying to remain in almost politics free zone,
Magnum
even
is
though it's
fucking
impossible.
Magnum is trying so hard to accommodate this dick bag, and then two is just being an even bigger dick about it. And then, okay, we're getting to a point where one starts to feel frustrated with TA because two slaps him twice after he said last week that he wasn't gonna let anybody slap him again. Two slaps him twice, and you're just begging him to stop being a bitch and stand up for himself.
Pretty much. And I mean, it's coming, obviously. Something's going to explode, and when it does, TA is not going to be the heel in this situation. You
I gotta
know,
tell you,
T-
I I was talking about earlier today just how much that I've learned about booking from watching the show, from going, from watching like 5 or 6 months of Ernie Ladd's like very uninspired, just here are some matches, to like what this territory has been since like Thanksgiving. It's
Mhm.
so everything is so much more interesting, and I really like it's interesting this angle because like yeah, they are turning to heel, but it's to turn TA even more babyface. I guess the correct way to say it would be like this angle is to get TA over to the next level. But it's just like the little steps, in the way it works week to week. It was because people talk about week to week booking, and like I never really quite understood what that was supposed to mean because I had never seen it done well.
Mhm.
And just what this show has been the last 3 months, it's like I feel like I'm taking a master class in booking from Professor Bill Dundee.
And here's the thing, like Ernie Ladd was also a really good booker and, taking things slowly. But you would go weeks where, yeah, we're building this angle slowly, but it's just going so slowly, it drags at times while waiting for something to
Okay,
happen. This angle, we know two or is going to at some point turn on Magnum TA. We know that. but every week something happens, something
and
maybe a little, and you're like,
and here's the
okay.
thing.
Mhm.
This would be slow for Memphis. So this is slow for Dundee.
Indeed, yeah, because I mean they're not running the Mid
Right.
South Coliseum every Monday
Right. It's
night.
because it's because Memphis was a weekly town, and Mid South doesn't do weekly towns. They do like monthly towns mostly.
Yeah, yeah. Like the most frequent town they run is Shreveport because they do the
Because
TV
it's
tapings
TV.
every other week, and they do a Shreveport house show on the opposite week. Like if you live in Shreveport, you get a lot
Yeah.
of Mid South wrestling if you want it. Um,
Yeah.
but
I'd
yet,
go.
honestly, in some ways, this actually reminds me of the Triple H Batista angle in 2005. Like it's a slow build, but every week something happens where the fire is increasing. You're just waiting for the big turn to happen. In that case, you're waiting for Batista to flip out and turn babyface on Triple H. Here again, you know Mr. Wrestling 2 is going to turn on Magnum TA. You know that's going to happen. Magnum TA is too nice of a guy to split from Mr. Wrestling 2 on his own. He needs to have this asshole finally turn him, and you know it's going to happen, and you know it's going to be great when it happens.
Yeah. And
And
here's the other thing. And I was gonna bring this up later because
Mhm.
we're gonna see that in just a minute. But it's like, okay, there's a lot more interesting stuff going on in the territory now, and then there are these two top storylines. You've got the one that, okay, you and I being in the future know that we're building to the last Stampede. That's one story.
Mhm.
And then you also have the story of 2 and TA. But then those stories are also intertwined. And then it's got to be here in the next week or two that it's a crucial moment in both stories.
Yeah, honestly, I think it's the same episode. I think, but
Huh?
we'll see. Because yeah, it's March, whatever goddamn day today is, March 3rd, and the Superdome is a month away.
Yeah. Would
Just keep that in
I was just
mind.
trying to think. When do they switch to tag belts? That's got to be like this week or next week.
Yeah, it's
Like
either this week or next week.
one of
Because
the
I
house
think,
shows, a house show, I
yeah,
assume. But yeah, it's got to be in the next week or
yeah.
two.
I think the angle, I mean, spoiling a 41-year-old show, I think the cake angle you said is in 2 weeks, and I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
it's the
that's what.
same
Yeah.
episode.
Okay. All right.
So,
Yeah. Perfect.
yeah. All right. So, Midnight Express versus Joe Savoldi and John King. Last week, Joe Savoldi teamed with George Weingroff and his massive penis. This week, he traded in for John King, whose penis, I assume, is pretty average size. Um, let's go to this week's Jim Cornette intro.
Enough research about. Let me just say a couple of things. I want to ask you people at home one question. Who does Buffalo Bill Watts think he is coming out here criticizing other people all the time? I think he thinks he's Marshall Matt Dillon or somebody riding the range at Mid-South defending right and might. Well, let me tell you a couple of things. First of all, I'm sick of hearing him run his big mouth about me and about other people. And secondly, I'll tell you one other thing. We have already proved that Magnum TA is a coward and a chicken, and for him to come out here and defend him, I don't think he knows what he's talking about. And if anybody got up in my face, let me tell you something. I'd get right up and I'd slap them silly. And I'm going to introduce to you now the greatest tag team that you've ever seen. You know who they are. The buddies that women love and men fear. Loverboy Dennis and beautiful Bobby the Midnight Express.
Oh yeah, we forgot to mention that too. Bill Watts got it from the announce table and went and got involved in the Mr. Wrestling 2 thing. And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
funny
He
because
did.
I don't like I really don't know how Junkyard Dog gets involved in the angle. I mean I kind of know, but I don't know because it really feels like they're building up to Bill Watts teaming with Magnum TA. But
Well, Junkyard
that's
Dog
not.
isn't in the angle. Stagger Lee is.
You're right. I apologize to Junkyard Dog. Um, but yeah, so like I honestly like 'cause we're at this point of like because I know it's Stagger Lee. It's going to be in a month. When the hell is Junkyard Dog getting suspended or whatever the hell
Uh,
happens? Because it's not.
I bet if we,
You know,
I bet if we keep doing the podcast, we'll find out.
I bet we will. So this
By
isn't
the
going to be our
way,
last show. I thought we were going to quit after, now that we've gotten super successful with all
uh,
these listens.
uh,
We're going to quit.
yeah. Well, hey, we literally have dozens and dozens of listeners now. How about
I
that?
know
I,
more than the usual dozen.
well, it's worth noting Cornette in a red suit jacket this week, so he's starting to move toward the louder outfits.
Yes, he's discovered colors. Maybe
Yeah,
it's like Spike Dudley, LSD Spike Dudley, and he suddenly just looked at all the pretty colors.
he probably
Go into
found some. He found some men's shop that had like some loud shit and just thought it was, here we go. I
it.
don't know if
It'd
was
be
it
big in the heat.
Alexandria, New Orleans, who knows?
Plus,
Houston.
plus he comes if he now comes on with wacky outfits, and he has the gall to tell off Boyd Pierce for his wacky outfits. That's even more
Yeah,
heat.
it is.
Like,
It is.
like yeah, when Jim Cornette comes out in a black suit and a black tie, it's like okay, it's like yeah, Boyd Pierce kind of looks weird, but when he comes out in a canary yellowed sports coat and matching pants, it's like okay, what the hell are you smoking, dude? Um,
It's
but
so because like you said, Cornette had been like the fucking B team heel announcer for like he would be on the spot shows that Jimmy Hart wasn't on in
yeah,
Memphis, and it like
yeah,
this again. This is the first wrestling job that he's ever gotten on his own merits, and he's
hmm
just it's you're watching him week to week just every week he knows a little bit more about how to be fucking obnoxious.
yeah. Every week he becomes Jim Cornette a little bit more.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So remember during the Mr. Wrestling 2 promo when he said he could team up with anybody to take on the Midnight
Yes,
Express?
I do
Well,
recall that.
he's testing that theory here because Mr. Wrestling 2 storms to the ring and orders Joe Savoldi to the back, saying he bought Joe Savoldi's contract. Now I
I
wonder
have
what
questions.
did Joe Savoldi get paid for it? Because that was my question.
Well, and okay, so when he says he bought Savoldi's contract, does he mean that he bought the contract for this match, or is he officially Joe Savoldi's manager now? And how did he buy Joe Savoldi's contract without him knowing it? Who did he buy it from? Who owned Joe Savoldi's contract? Why does Joe Savoldi have a contract?
This is the worst thing Chrissy Smith has ever done this week. He owned, he owned Joe Savoldi and he sold Joe Savoldi to
But I
Wrestling
love
2.
this match. They only went 2 minutes, but I love it because it starts like two wrestles with Bobby and Dennis, and two's like a push act, so they're wrestling on equal terms. And then two tags out to John King, and it's immediately a squash match.
No, time out for a second. Mr. Wrestling 2, who's talking about how he can beat the Midnights by himself, he tags out.
To John King.
Yes. It's important
With
for
all
me to
due
note that
respect.
yeah, yeah. If you needed more hints thrown in your face that he's turning heel, it's because he couldn't beat the Midnight Express by himself. Because even though the Midnight Express are heels and are going to get beaten by a good babyface team, they're not going to get beaten by one good babyface. You need two good baby faces. And Mr. Wrestling 2
Right.
discovered that about 30 seconds into this match.
Uh-huh.
Uh, um, I note that the Midnight Express did the hard attack on John King, and then Eaton nearly dropped King on his head when they did the suplex into the power slam finish that they've been doing, and then they pinned John King.
They sure did.
Poor John King. I had high hopes that he might get a win this week. Um,
If only.
so Mr. Wrestling 2 attacks Dennis Condrey. So Eaton takes Cornette's racket, and is this the first time somebody's been hit with the racket, maybe?
I think
Because
so. I think that I
Eaton,
remember, yeah.
Eaton takes the racket, and I wrote "swacked two" with it because it was like he didn't like overhand hit him with the flat of the racket. He like jabbed it into two. Like,
Yeah, which I kind of thought might be more, but like if I had a tennis racket, I think I would try to jab it in somebody's throat.
huh. TA ran in for the save and gave Kanji the belly-to-belly suplex before making the cover because that's what you do sometimes.
Have
Krusher
it.
Darsow, yeah, Krusher Darsow ran down, yanked TA out of the ring, and posted him before running away. The Midnights double team two until Ye three jobbers made the save. No one has wasted so much money on this show since the last time General Skandor Akbar signed somebody. Because what did Mr. Wrestling 2 get out of whatever he paid for the contract of Joe Savoldi?
Yeah, and that's another thing. Here's the other major storyline in the territory, which I guess would you would describe as Dog versus or like Dog and Duggan versus Volkov and Darso, and
Yeah,
that feud is also interacting with the other feuds here.
yeah. And this is what's making the show great. We mentioned it's like everyone's got their feud, but we intertwine them to the point where
Yes.
you can have random ass matches and you're like, this is a continuation of the overall story. You know?
Now we know, of course, because why wouldn't he, that Tony Khan listens to the podcast. Tony,
Hmm.
this is what we're talking about when
Yeah.
when we say you need to mix storylines more in the booking.
Hmm.
It makes the show a
I
lot more
mean,
exciting.
I think that explains why we suddenly got more listenership because he turned on some of the other AEW people to this show. To which I
Yeah.
say hi to the Outrunners or whoever else is listening this week. You
Well,
know.
they were listening to they were using the temporal ham radio to listen to us way back in 1983.
Mhm. I imagine when Julie Hart's walking to the ring with her song playing in her head, she's hearing the opening of our show. She hears, "This is Bill Alfonso. You're listening to something else."
No, you know how she always walks out mouthing her song. I want,
Yeah.
I want her to mouth. This is Bill Fonzie Alfonso.
The manager of champions. Oh, that would be amazing. Julie, if you're listening to this, and why wouldn't you be? Please do that. You know,
Please.
it would let us mark out for it, but even if nobody else gets it.
Nobody else would get it. It would just be for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. Um, so I'll be honest, I did not I was a little surprised when Darso ran out because I was expecting like TA to clear the ring and then two to get pissed off because how dare you help me out? I told you I could do this
Mhm.
myself, but
And
that's
then
not what happened.
what they did was even better.
Yes. Yes. Um, and so now, by the way, before we get to this next segment, okay. So we've now had the opening of this show where we talked about Magnum TA is going to wrestle Krusher Darsow in the fifth round of the
Yes.
first round of of the TV title tournament.
I know where
We
you're going
also
with this.
yes, we also had Krusher Darsow run in on the last match, um, where he was referred to as Krusher Darsow. And now, halfway through the show, we're getting an update on Krusher Darsow because we've gone too long without hearing from Paul Bosch. Because why? But let's go to Houston, where Paul Bosch is with Nikolai Volkov and Krusher Darsow.
Ladies and gentlemen, Nikolai Volkov says that he has a message for the American people and he wants to give it to them, and that fair play says he should be up here doing it. You may do it.
That's right. Right here, I have nobody also but my comrade Darsow. And he have American name Darsow. Because he was a great wrestler, because I like him, because he accepted the Russian flag. Now I legally change his name in Khrushchev Krusher. because the Khrushchev was the greatest Russian president, and he was the fighting president. And here, Darsow, I represent you this show. Do you know what this means when Comrade Khrushchev did this? I tell you, Darsow, Comrade Khrushchev says, we go bury the American capitalism in this, and me, comrade, we go bury American wrestlers. And now, for this event, I will sing Russian national anthem for the Russian comrades here in the States and the whole world.
Comrade,
comrade.
that was beautiful.
That was beautiful. We go bury them, comrade, we go bury them because that's what we are here for. We go show those cowards they're going to show up in the Russian Olympics, and I'd be afraid if they don't show up in their own Olympics. And look at the Sarajevo, they never been to one gold medal.
Well, Krusher Kruschev, the Russian turncoat, is in the ring now, and if Magnum TA doesn't show up, it will be a forfeit, and Krusher Kruschev will advance in the tournament standings. Let's go to the ring announcer now.
Okay. So, first of all, I forgot to mute myself during this, but I was popping for a couple of reasons, not the least of which was that during the Russian national anthem, I got a pop-up on my Zoom saying to please confirm your speaking language because it looks like you're speaking another language.
Yeah. That's funny.
Also, what Paul Bosch might be more senile than Mr. Wrestling 2, because apparently he's listening to Fair Play, and Fair Play is telling him to put the Russians on for a promo. Fair Play is like 9 years old at this time. Why are you listening to Johnny Fairplay, Paul Bosch?
Seriously,
I think
Survivor doesn't even exist yet.
nope. Then Volkov announced that Darsow's name is changed to Krusher Kruschev because Krusher was the best. Whatever. I keep laughing every time he has the shovel with him. Like, just
I
so.
like the symbolism. I like the symbolism of the red shovel.
Remember when he brought this? Yeah, you were here when he had the sack of potatoes, right?
Yes, or it was a sack of wheat.
Those potatoes, sack of wheat, yes.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sad that Nikolai Volkov. I mean, he's still getting pushed, but I'm sad that this angle's kind of put onto the back burner because we haven't gotten a good geopolitical Bill Watts rant in the last few weeks. But yeah, Krusher Darsow, who's been Krusher Darsow for half the show, is now Krusher Kruschev.
We also haven't had an incoherent Volkov promo in quite a bit.
I actually wrote down, Trey, what the fuck did Volkov say?
I wrote another incoherent Volkov promo. I can do Junkyard Dog. I cannot do Nikolai Volkov.
Oh, I thought you were our global translator on this show.
No, I only know people that you hear growing up in the South. So like, older black man who talk like I can understand that. Volkov is beyond me.
Oh Lord. Darsow deadpan saying Volkov singing was beautiful. I popped for that too. I gotta love it. All right, so we've learned that Magnum TA may not show up for our next match, which is Krusher Kruschev versus Magnum TA in the 5th round of the television tournament for a medal and $10,000 in the final first round match. And
but then
I don't even know why they
guess
bother.
What? He does.
TA just hits the ring during poor Reeser's introductions. Second week in a row that Reeser couldn't introduce the TV tournament for a medal and $10,000 match.
Poor Reeser.
Yeah.
So this is going to mark an exciting new time in the podcast. We're gonna see how many weeks it takes me to learn how to spell Khrushchev.
How was the first week attempt?
Um, I got it on the third try, and then I copied and pasted the rest of the times.
Okay. Do you think you'll be able to figure this out before the ninth round of the television tournament for a medal and $10,000? I mean, I don't know if he's going to be in the ninth round. I just, you know, figuring you got 4 weeks to try to figure it out. Do you think you can do it within four
Well,
weeks?
I'm a pretty good speller. I like to think so.
Okay. Well, good luck. I look forward to the progress to
All
see how that
right.
goes. So two came to ringside to watch his partner wrestle because what the show hasn't had enough was Mr. Wrestling 2 on it. Um, Darsow put on the Russian-Canadian backbreaker and two submit it for TA. And um, the funny thing is, like, I don't know if it was supposed to be quicker, but like poor Darsow had to hold TA up there for like 30 seconds while two was um, capitulating to the referee, and
Okay, you're
eventually the ref.
you
Go
are
ahead.
you're underselling how great this was because yes, Krusher Khruschev had TA in the Canadian backbreaker, and you could see that two was gonna thinking about throwing in the towel, but then TA countered and had Khrushchev pinned when two finally threw in the towel, and the
Yeah,
referee accepted the corner stop instead of counting the pin. So TA
yeah.
had the match won, had a visual pin on Khrushchev when TA threw in the towel, or when two
I
threw in the
wrote,
towel.
oh boy, that is not the best finish we've ever seen.
It is though. I love this finish. Look, for what they were trying to convey here, this was perfectly conceived and executed.
It really was, and obviously, Mr. Wrestling 2 gets to say, "Hey, I was just trying to save my protege from getting injured," while at the same time, anyone with two eyes can see that, helping his protege was not in his wheelhouse this week. You know, he
Another
was trying to
lesson
embarrass.
from Professor Dundee.
Yep. Also, never capitulate on an empty stomach. Uh,
I sure tried ever to capitulate on an empty stomach.
yep. So because we haven't had enough Bill Watts or Mr. Wrestling 2 on the show, Bill Watts is going to interview Mr. Wrestling 2. Where the hell's JR? Why couldn't he do this? Let's go to Bill now.
Back, I'm a little bit confused. I just saw you come out here and looked like maybe you'd come to your senses, and you were going to coach him. And Magnum TA came out even after being badly hurt, coming to your rescue, I might add. He came into the match. He proved the kind of courage he's got. Badly hurt. He goes in. He wrestled the match, and he had the guy pinned, and you threw in the towel. What's going on?
Confused. You're the one that's confused. The man was bleeding. He was half beat to death. I don't want to see him get carried out here on a stretcher. You know he don't have the... Hey, TA is nothing without me, and he was in there fixing to get killed. That's why I threw the towel in. What's the matter with you?
Well, I think everybody saw it at home. The Magnum TA still had a lot of fight in him. As a matter of fact, he had the man beat. This is just the kind of thing, I just don't know what I can say about that. Let's switch gears here a minute.
What's the matter with you? What's the matter with you, Bill Watts?
Oh, so yesterday, the listeners wouldn't know this, but you know this. I had a very large calzone yesterday.
Yes, you did. It was a very
I
impressive
did.
looking calzone.
Yeah. So at that same meal, my wife and my friend Raul decided to share a pizza that was just like it was like the supreme. It was like a supreme pizza on crack because it was like every topping, and the pizza was called the "What's the matter with you?"
I'm happy that there was a reason for this story. Like we had the discussion about crack earlier in the show. What's the matter with you? So yeah, hey, what we just said, two defends it by saying he's looking out for his partner, he's looking out for his protege, even though everyone with two eyes and half a brain, you know, pointed out that, he's fucking over his boy Magnum TA.
Yeah, he is fucking over his boy. He's kind of a dickbag.
Master Wrestling 2 is such a dick. This is why he has to retire because nobody likes him. Um,
Exactly.
so remember last week when I said that Jim Neidhart was never going to be on the show again, kind of? Well,
I do
the kind
recall
of
that.
part, yes, the kind of part is because, well, he's here in a tape match. We go to
Mm-hmm.
clips of Butch Reed versus Neidhart in a football helmet on a pole match. We saw Reed shimmy up the pole to try something heroic, and he got the helmet, but Neidhart got it, but got a face full of power, according to the announcing.
Power.
Uh, Reed did a helmet headbutt, and then one with a diving spear. So at this point, because this was the main event of the show, the crowd had seen enough, and they are leaving in droves while we try to do a post-match angle, which is
Oh,
just tremendous. Yes. This reminded me of the good old days at the Arsenal Boys Club when at the end of the second taping they put on the job match and you'd see everybody leaving. So they had to start doing
yeah.
stuff in that last segment to try to get people to stay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, so Reed was beating Neidhart's ass, and Terry Taylor, of all people, made the save. And I wrote, is there anybody in this territory who is not in at least two angles? I guess Jim Neidhart, because he's on his way out the door.
Yeah,
Um,
that's cool. Hey, Terry Taylor's just being a good guy.
yeah. Reed boinked Taylor in the head after teasing
I'm
leaving.
sorry, Reed Boink Taylor.
Yes, Reed boinked Taylor with the helmet
Okay,
after
so he
teasing
put a
leaving.
he put protection on before he boinked Terry Taylor.
Exactly. Um,
Can the title of this week's show please be Butch Reed boinked Terry Taylor?
sure. There's going to be never capitulate on an empty stomach, but uh,
Oh, both
or
are good. Both are good.
Butch Reed boink with protection. That's too long. Um, Oh, where the hell was I? Because I had to scroll up. There we go. Scroll back down. There we go. Reed introduced the helmet to Taylor's face, which sounds even dirtier now that we changed this uh, title of this episode. Reed did a top rope spear, which is banned in the NFL because you see, Trey, and I know you're not a sports fan, Trey. I know it's not your thing. Hey, it doesn't have to be for everybody. But in the NFL, you cannot climb to the top rope and come off with a spear to someone's head.
So the NFL runs on Mid South Wrestling rules.
Yes. Yes.
Where the
I
what,
always love I always love
do
when
you
people
get
talk about how I'm sorry, go ahead.
do you get disqualified from football if you throw somebody over the top rope?
That's never come up actually.
Ah,
Yeah, maybe next season we'll see.
hope
Um,
so.
but I love when announcers say that things are illegal in other sports or it never happened in other sports because they're just not things that could possibly fucking happen. Do you remember during the Kurt Angle Chris Benoit feud in 2001 when Paul Heyman was screaming that Kurt Angle never tapped out in the Olympics or in any of his amateur wrestling matches? Well,
Because
there's a
because
reason
that's
for
not
that.
because that's not
Tapping
a
out is
part
not.
of
Yeah.
Olympic style wrestling.
Yes, technically, he's right. Kurt Angle never tapped out during Olympic style wrestling.
You are technically correct, which is the best kind of correct.
Yes. Um, we then come back to the Arsenal Boys Club for Butch Reed and Buddy Landell, who are becoming my new favorite tag team, versus Mike Jackson and Jason Walker. And when I looked up Jason Walker, I discovered that he is not the Jason Walker who was on the 2021-2022 Tamaqua Blue Raiders varsity wrestling team, Tamaqua,
Oh,
Pennsylvania. Shout out to my
okay.
brother who doesn't listen to this show. And Buddy Landel pinned him with a delayed elbow drop. And you sound like you were going to say something when I brought up that he was not on the Tamaqua Blue Raiders.
I was just glad to know. You knew more about him than I did. Now I know that
Yes.
he is not. He is this Jason Walker and not a different Jason Walker that I've also never heard of.
Yes. I never heard the other Jason Walker either until I tried to Google that shit. Oh my God. I don't think I told you this. And before I say this, I try to avoid talking about my shoot job on here just because nothing good could ever come out of me talking about my shoot job on this podcast. Because knowing my luck, someone will actually listen to this show. But so at my
So
shoot job,
wait, wait,
um,
wait. Your shoot job. So
yes,
so
my real
and
job, the one that pays me money every
okay,
couple of
so
weeks.
so so am I to infer that you don't work at your job?
No, I shoot. Um,
Okay, just making
but
sure.
anyway, so we're not allowed to say Google. Like we're gonna Google something because
Uh,
that makes it sound like we're showing favoritism towards one search engine over the other. So we have to say, if we're talking to a customer, we have to say something to the effect of, let me do an internet search for that. Um, and
uh,
I'm like, so I can't say that I
what?
didn't ask Jeeves or I
I'm,
binged
it's
something.
so you can't say let me ask Jeeves real quick.
Yes, I cannot say that. I
Those were the
did
good
make
old
my
days.
coworker I did make my coworkers laugh in training when that was brought up, and so I, said, "Oh, so I can't tell somebody I'm going to ask Jeeves or I'm going to Bing or do a Yahoo search or anything." Because yes, I don't. We don't want to show favoritism towards Google by using the accepted vernacular for doing an internet search, even if you don't use Google to do it. Um,
Yeah, that's a very silly thing.
the mo- I really hope one day when I get dragged kicking and screaming against my will into the office, like I will, based on when this show drops, I get dragged kicking and screaming to the office on Thursday this week, which just fun. But anyway, I hope one day that they serve Jello, just so I can point out that by calling it Jello shows favoritism towards one brand of flavored gelatin over another.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah.
It's a good
This is
point.
why they both love me and hate me at work. Uh,
I,
yes, I said Butcher and Buddy Landell win. Do you have anything you want to say about this?
uh, it was a pretty good elbow drop.
Yeah, I love Buddy Landell, and from what I've heard, this is a fun team that is formed. So
Yeah, I don't know
hopefully,
Buddy well, so I'm enjoying seeing him.
yeah. Actually, Jim Cornette just posted a video today as we're recording. Someone asked a question about Buddy, and it
Oh,
was fun listening to him talk about Buddy some more.
yeah. I
Um,
was last week. I was going through some Cornette clips on the YouTube and listened to some discussion. I haven't seen yet, but now I know that it's coming. When he gives Buddy another chance in Smoky Mountain later on.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. Leading to one of the best
The
promos
yeah.
ever.
Yeah,
And you've
for the
seen that
match with
promo,
Shawn
right?
Michaels. I
Yep.
don't know if I've ever seen it. I've heard about it. But yeah,
Okay.
we'll get to it,
It
and we'll get to it in 2 years.
it is honestly, I'm pretty sure it's safe to say that it's the last great promo in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Like
That's fair.
there's good promos, but it's the last great promo.
I believe you.
So, yeah. So we get a recap of Terry Taylor painting Krusher Darsow pink last week. It embarrassed him so much he changed his name. And then we get Jerry Gray versus Terry Taylor. In the US, Jerry Gray is known as Jerry Gray. In the UK, he's Jerry Gray. Like
Yeah,
one person may have gotten that joke.
I got it. I got it.
You're that one person.
I love
Uh,
these babyface. I love these babyface enhancement matches. Like it seems so silly because they're the wrestling equivalent of a saltine cracker. But you know what? Like, I fucking love saltine crackers, and sometimes I'll just sit there and eat a whole sleeve of saltine crackers.
See, I was waiting because you mentioned this to me earlier. I was waiting for what your comparison was because you didn't because I told you what I thought you might have been meaning that a saltine cracker is small, a little salty, but ultimately can be filling, like a babyface squash match. But you didn't
Yeah.
elaborate.
Well, I wanted to say something for the podcast.
Yeah. April 7th is the Superdome that we're announcing for the first time here on March 3rd. Keep that in mind again. If they announced WrestleMania, like we're what 7 weeks away from WrestleMania. If in 2 weeks they announced that for the first time in 2 weeks they announced that WrestleMania is April 20th, and then 2 weeks after that they booked the angle for the main event, do you think they sell 25,000 tickets to Allegiant Stadium?
Uh, well, not if they don't like. I believe that they could not announce a card and do that, but like they would have to, like people would have to know that the show was going to happen because
Yeah.
people buy WrestleMania tickets like 6 months ahead of time just based on the fact that it's WrestleMania. Every WrestleMania ticket that I bought not knowing who was going to be on the card or what any matches were going to be.
Technically, I can't say the same. Well, twice, but one of my first WrestleManias was the first Cena Rock WrestleMania. So we knew that a year in advance. Um,
Yeah, that's
but
true.
other than that, yeah, I mean, outside of last year when I knew I was going, I was just waiting to buy my tickets to the last minute because I was confident that the price would be cut, and I was
Yeah.
right. Um, other than that, Cena Rock was the only time I bought a WrestleMania ticket knowing in advance what the matches were going to be, or what a match at least was going to be.
Felt very lucky today. We my wife found out that what is it? Sailor Moon the Super Live, the Sailor Moon musical is they're touring the US again. And she didn't know and she was like on the phone with her friend and her friend told her about it and she texted me and I looked like yeah, they're in Houston 2 weeks from now, but luckily there were still plenty of tickets. So yeah, I'm going to see Sailor Moon the musical.
Awesome. And I guess just so we can, well, we'll talk off the air. I was gonna say, are we talking about 2 weeks from shoot today or work today? Like 2 weeks from Sunday or 2 weeks from Tuesday?
No, it's gonna be on a Wednesday, so I'm gonna miss
Oh,
Dynamite, but but
okay. So yeah,
you know,
the more important thing is you're not gonna mess with our taping schedule.
no, that's I would never.
Yeah.
It would-
By the way, so Terry Taylor wins this match with a five arm, and I this was when I had my blonde moment because I was looking away during the finish and I didn't see it, so I had to rewind to see how Terry Taylor won. And has Terry Taylor ever won a match with a move other than the forearm? I don't think so.
uh,
Maybe he has, but it's there's a few and far between. Needless to say, I did not have to rewind to know that Terry Taylor won with the five arm.
well, you never know. The one time you don't check will be the one time you make an ass of yourself.
He wins with the sharpshooter. Um, Rock and Roll Express versus Randy Barber and Steve Brinson. If there were any hairdressers in the crowd during Rock and Roll's entrance, they would have definitely been a Randy Barber. And Morton pinned Brinson with the double drop kick. Is there anything else to say about this?
I need Randy Barber and Steve Brinson versus Tom Lentz and Jerry Gray just because that'd be the most generic match of all time.
You're talking about Tom Lentz, who played a little football,
Yeah, Tom Lentz who played little football.
who's not on this show this week. What the hell?
No, what a tragedy.
We always have to have Tom Lentz, who played a little
Yeah.
football, on this show.
By the way, this was the point. Apparently, I forgot a conversation that we had on the podcast a couple of weeks ago because this was the point that uh I wondered if Bill when Bill was using the temporal hand radio to listen to our Mid South review, if he had also been listening to Smoky Mountain and got confused because he started talking about I couldn't hear if he was saying Blues Brothers, Bruise Brothers. But yeah, it turns out
No.
that there are also Bruise Brothers coming into the territory here.
Kind of. So we
Kind of.
see a music video for the Bruise Brothers, and like, no, not the Harrises, but the
No.
Memphis ones.
And by
Pork
the way,
Chop, Cash, and Dream Machine.
I'm not just dumb because they are the Bruise Brothers, but the
Yes,
song was Soul Man by the Blues Brothers.
yes. I mean, that's kind of the point. Now the funny thing is, maybe you saw things differently, but the first half of this video, I thought it was setting them up as baby faces, which then was weird because all of a sudden they started giving their money to Jimmy Hart. Because yes, Jimmy Hart makes an
Yeah.
appearance in this music
Jimmy
video.
Hart cameo.
Yeah,
Wasn't that awesome?
and I'm like, it like they're not baby faces. Like, are they? And no, like I'm pretty sure they're heels. So I thought this was kind of weird. But you want to know what else is weird?
What?
They're not going to wrestle on TV.
Really?
They're Yeah, they're here to do a bunch of house show matches, and maybe like they might air a house show match on TV, maybe one of those things. But they don't come into the Irish McNeil Boys Club until October of 1985.
Oh, wow. Wouldn't have imagined this act lasted that long.
Yes. So
It's
I'm
such a Memphis gimmick. Memphis
yes,
was the fucking capital of just rip off gimmicks. Like
yes.
fucking Freddy Krueger, like Jason the Terrible, the Batman. I'm sure there was a Ninja Turtle. Like if there is an intellectual property, Memphis at some point had a rip off of it.
Yes. But isn't that where Randy Hogan debuted?
Probably.
We don't need
Now,
no intellectual property. So
if Terry Bollea had been in the audience when the Rock and Roll Express came out, would he be a Randy Hogan?
his daughter would have been, which is me, which
Ah,
I shouldn't say that because his daughter wasn't born until 1988 or 1989 or something. So, um, but speaking of pedophiles, um, we get
Grizzly Smith.
yes, we get informed that Jake Roberts is going to be here next week, and then
Oh,
we
poor
then
Jake.
well, that's not even what we say. Speaking of pedophiles, because then they say that Grizzly Smith next week would like to see the Midnight Express versus the Rock and Roll Express. And I wrote, well, I'd like a matchmaker who isn't a pedophile, but I'm not getting that either, am I?
Well,
I
at
think
least
we
we're gonna
actually
get
are
that.
going to, I'm pretty sure
We
we are
do.
actually going to get the Rock and Roll Express versus the Midnight
We do
Express.
get that because it's fun. Like I don't want to. I don't want to spoil 40-year-old wrestling for you, but there will many months down the line be a substantial feud between the Midnight and the Rock and Roll. But we're gonna get
What?
just a little. We're gonna get just a little taste of it next week,
What? You're
which
meaning
I
to tell
think.
me you are sitting there and you're trying to tell me that the Rock and Roll Express, Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson, are going to have a feud with the Midnight Express, Bobby Eaton and Dennis Condrey.
I wouldn't tell tales out of school.
Huh. You'd think someone would have ever
Yeah,
mentioned that those two teams wrestled each other.
but I think Dundee did that on purpose. It was the show. It was to show Watts like, hey, I know it's not right now, but you have to see this because you have to know that we have to do this.
And next week, I think, I mean, I'm not searching through house show results, but that might be the first ever match between these two teams.
I I think it was because they
Yeah.
were like, yeah,
Because
I
Midnight
don't think that
Express
they
is
were
a
wrestling
brand
on the
new
house
tag
shows.
team.
I
Yeah.
think that,
And
or at
the
least into
Midnights have been wrestling,
January, the yeah
yeah, the Midnights have been
they
wrestling 2 and TA.
yeah. So that
So it makes good
maybe we'll look
sense.
maybe we'll look to double check before next week, but that's
Yeah.
it's probably the first meeting of the Rock and Roll Express and the Midnight Express.
Yep. All right, so before we move on to world class, I actually wanted to share this story with you. Have I ever told you why the show is called something else?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so it's not really that great of a story, but I created a much better story. So my original podcast, way back when, that I started in 2014, was called the Wrestling Outsiders Podcast with my brother. And it it was slightly less popular than this show is, but just leave it at that. But anyway, um, about a year later, there was another podcast that came out called The Wrestling Outsiders, and I guarantee they had no idea we existed. It's not like, oh, they decided to steal our great name, and they were much more successful than we were. Probably because they also put forth the effort to become more successful, but still. And so
Sure.
I have created the backstory that when I went to create a new podcast a few years ago, I was going to reuse my old podcast name, but I got a cease and desist letter from the new Wrestling Outsider podcast telling me that I had to change my name to something else. And so that's how I
It's
decided that the name of the show is something else because I misread a letter and thought I was legally have to change the name to something else.
Okay, that's better than whatever the real story is.
The real story is I think I just thought it was a cool name for a show.
One of these days, we're gonna have to do a rebrand that's a podcast that's distinctly Trey and Arya.
Uh, As opposed to the way I change our logo like every 6 months.
Yeah, I guess.
We don't have names that make a good couple name. Like we can't really merge Arya and
No,
Trae.
no,
Traria.
no. That's not what I mean. No, that's not what I
I,
like.
I
It's like
I know you want something that like it it pops more and makes people know that this is you and I.
like
I
we
get
need a
that.
name for our tag team.
Yes. Um the B Sharps. No, that sucks. All right. Well, while we're trying to think of a better team name, we're gonna go to World Class here. Um, and we're gonna go to Bill Mercer to kick off the show. And Bill Mercer is gonna be on the show like a dozen times before the end, and it's all just like quick 30-second little things. So we're just gonna play two of them here in the intro. First, we're gonna play the original intro, and then we'll talk a smidge about it before playing more intro, as I have it listed as.
Welcome to World Class Championship Wrestling. I'm Bill Mercer. Today, on this edition of our program, we're going to look back to the life of David Von Erich. A salute, a biographical sketch, a tribute, if you wish, to the memory of this great athlete, this fine friend, this hero. A memory of David Von Erich.
Okay, so yeah, this is the David Von Erich tribute show, memorial show that we've been waiting a month for at this point. Um, David died February 10th, and we had two shows in the can. And I'm still not 100% sure why this wasn't last week, except I guess, you know what? We want to get some ratings out of a David Von Erich tribute show, and at least last week they plugged it for this week. But yeah, this is just going to be Bill Mercer in an empty studio in front of a black backdrop, pitching it to different parts of the show. Actually, he's not even going to be pitching. He's just going to be talking at different points.
Yeah,
And
that's
yeah,
a fair description.
yeah. And so after that first thing, they went to commercial and they came back. And I'm going to play a little bit more here. And I think, at least until the end, this is going to be the last, or the only other Bill Mercer thing I think. Because, like I said, he does this about 4 or 5 times throughout the show where he talks for 20 to 30 seconds. But let's play a little bit more Bill Mercer right now.
There's that time immediately after the loss of a loved one, member of the family, a friend, a hero, that we are totally and completely distraught and emotionally spent. And that's as it should be. But as time passes, and we have the time to reflect and remember, we begin to feel that awareness of this lost one and feel good about the memories, about the humorous things that happen, about some of the sad things, about the injuries, the hurts. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to remember the memory of David Von Erich, a fine athlete, a fine son, and a hero to us.
All right. So I'll be honest, like when the show started, because I knew that there's going to be a lot of heavy religious overtones at times. I thought that Mark Lawrence might have actually made for a better option with that in mind, because Mark Lawrence was, wasn't he a pastor or a priest himself? Or at least he was in the
I
church. So
I I thought that
in
you were going
that
to
case,
say because he's much more acquainted with wine.
yeah, I'm trying to be nice here. I'm trying to take the high road in this thing here.
Oh, don't
Um,
do that.
when should we ever start taking the high road, I guess? But anyway, we're gonna get say this a lot more later, but Bill Mercer was the perfect person to host this show. He's legitimately the MVP of World Class Championship Wrestling, and it became very apparent on this show because he was just the right guy, the right voice, the right gravitas, and he holds this show together. And
Yeah,
we'll. Mhm.
this is why back now you would so frequently see the host of the wrestling show be like the local newscaster, sportscaster, because it's like somebody legitimate with credibility. And that
Yeah,
we've talked about before. Fucking Bill Mercer was like a legitimate journalist. They're covering like he was covering the news in Dallas when the Kennedy assassination happened. Like this is like a legitimate journalist.
yeah. And in some ways, it's what WWE tries to do by bringing in the Michael Coles and Jonathan Coachmans of the world, like because they're real news people, and it's like so they are better at in theory, they're better at handling something serious and dramatic without realizing that sometimes you just need a wrestling announcer. But in this case, Bill Mercer could do both, and it's not something that just anybody can do, obviously. Um, and Mercer, like, I don't want to say I ever thought he was bad, but I definitely never appreciated him as much until this episode.
Yeah, no, he did great.
Um, so from here they go to a music video. Now we have a few music videos throughout the show. I have no clue what the song really is that they're playing because obviously WWE is not going to play real music on these things. But I honestly thought, at least for the first music video, the song they used was very appropriate. It was equal parts sad and uplifting, which is what you want in this type of music video. And we'll see it throughout the show, but they had a shit ton of home video or home movie footage of David Von Erich growing up, which says something when you think about it. Like David Von Erich was born in like 58, and we have a lot of footage of him as a young child.
Yeah.
So,
Before the Rain (parentheses full mixed vocal by Chris Goldstone). If you're
l-
interested in cheap production music that was used on this
yeah,
show.
yeah. Well, like I said, to me,
By the
I
way,
thought it was of all the WWE stock music that they could use, I thought that was a good song.
and yes, I
Yeah.
did Shazam all of these songs.
Shazam! Not that Shazam.
Not that Shazam, but that's a great Shazam.
Mercer talked about all the titles David won and how he was the number one contender to the world title. Which we're gonna leave the weirdness for later about that, but it segues into our first match, David Von Erich versus NWA World Champion Harley Race. And I was trying to find where this match was from because I thought it was in Dallas, um, but I was able to figure out based on the finish and the fact that I don't know who the fuck that announcer was, but it was not Bill Mercer. Um,
No, it wasn't.
it I think it might have been Larry Matisek, but because this was St. Louis. This was
Oh,
May 20.
if it was St. Okay, if it was St. Louis, it probably was Larry Madison.
Yeah. It was May 27th, 1979, in St. Louis at the Chase Hotel. And technically, and I obviously we only saw like the end of this match. I don't know what led to this or what the pre-match story was to it. But technically, this match was Harley Race in a 2-on-1 handicap match against David and Fritz. And that's why Fritz was down there in his gear. And Kevin and the timing adds up because Kevin was also there and Kevin had wrestled on that show in the opener.
What was the date?
May 27th, 1979.
May 27th, 1979. Okay. I'm glad you can figure that out because I had no idea. I didn't even put together that it was St. Louis. I couldn't figure out where it was.
I didn't put together St. Louis because I thought it was Dallas, but I'm like, okay, I got to find where they wrestled. And every match I saw them in Texas, either Harley won
Yeah.
or David didn't win, or it was a tag match or something. And like this was, I mean, I guess it was a tag match to some degree, but like, Fritz never got involved in the match, at least that we saw. Um, but so I wrote, I don't know who the announcer is, but Jesus fucking Christ, I was begging for Mercer. Honestly, I'm begging for Mark Lawrence to do commentary at this point. Um, Now in the preview to this match, Mercer said this was the first time David used the claw, which I don't know if it's entirely the truth, because if this is Larry Madison, whoever it was, didn't really put it over that it was the first time he was using it, just that Fritz had been teaching it to him. Um,
By the
and
way,
mhm.
because I don't want us to just be shitting on Larry Madison. Larry Madison, he did a lot of shows with Dave when he was alive, and just really like very pleasant guy and really smart with the business. He just maybe wasn't the best announcer.
At least not in 1979. I mean,
No.
you know, I don't think we're going to be going back and watching a lot of St. Louis stuff here, but yeah. Um, so Harley goes for a middle rope headbutt, and David catches him in the claw. And I know that this really isn't the point of this, but again, we're supposed to believe wrestling's real. How the hell is your head going to bleed to the degree that everyone's head seems to bleed from the claw? And that took me down a rabbit hole that like it was I had to back out of because it would have taken us down a different direction here. But like basically, the claw, how the hell is the claw busting you open to such a degree? How is hitting you with the smooth side of a folding chair make you bleed in such a way? Like, you know what I mean? Like in reality, if I clonked you in the head with a chair tray, you're probably not going to spontaneously bleed.
Really?
Yes. You
Should we
know,
try it? Just to know?
if you want, but I like you too much to give you brain damage.
Oh, thank you. My brain is already damaged enough.
Mm. So anyway, David beat the world champion with the
Mhm.
claw. Um, I don't. The announcer, whether it's Matisek or was somebody else, they implied this was 2 out of 3 falls, and so that's the only reason why I can't definitively say that it's this match. But I could not find another match that it would be. You know, like the only other
Yeah.
match that the only other match I could find that may have fit this description was a match that went to a TV time limit draw in a 2 out of 3 falls match with neither man getting a fall. So at the finish, that's kind of threw me off because I was like, okay, so he's gonna go 1, 2, and then the bell's gonna ring for the TV time limit or something. But I don't think that's what this is. I think it is the St. Louis handicap match. Um, so we're gonna go to our first tribute of the show. I mean, outside of Bill Mercer, we're gonna go to Harley Race, who has something to say.
What I'm standing here talking to you about right now is probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my entire life. That's talking about a superb athlete and a superb person in his own right. That's David Von Erich. In my mind, if life had not been cut short, the kid would have been world's heavyweight champion. He was a super athlete and a super person, and that doesn't leave a lot left to say.
So, yeah, I mean, short, sweet, and to the point. And there's no higher praise from Harley Race than to say this kid was probably going to be world champion one day.
It's just the kind of simple, classy thing you'd expect from Harley, right?
Yeah. Um, and I'll wait till later to point something out that I noticed from all this, from all these tributes actually, as we get through them. But from here we go to Kevin Von Erich versus Jimmy Garvin with Sunshine from the Greatest International Star Wars back in June of '83. Um, they don't show the finish. In fact, they don't show the finish to a lot of these matches outside of that opener. But this is before Sunshine became the lovely person that we cheer for today. And this was when they were feuding over the Texas title. They don't show the finish, but if I recall, this is the match where they had a screwy finish. Sunshine helped Garvin win, but the NWA was there and they vacated the belt. I don't think this was the match where David won, so Sunshine and Garvin had to be the servants of Garvin.
Yeah, you're right. This was the one that ended in a DQ.
I mean, it would make sense why they wouldn't show the finish because he didn't win, technically.
But yeah, sure. I mean, he did
So
win.
then,
He won.
yeah,
He won the match by disqualification.
yeah, but that's not the explosive kind of win you'd want to show, I guess. Because like we'll see it
Well,
later. Like
then
he,
why show that match? Why not show a match that he wins explosively and decisively?
I don't know. I didn't put the show together.
Why not
If I
show
put the
the match where he beat Jimmy Garvin to win the Texas heavyweight title?
why I don't know. Why not show like I'm sure there was a match he beat Ric Flair in. Why not show
I
that
feel
match?
I feel like I'm playing you and just arguing something that doesn't matter.
Thanks. Thanks. That's how you view me as here. All right. So up next after the Kevin Roddick Jimmy Garvin match is a tribute from Jimmy Garvin, who's with Precious. Let's go to Jimmy Garvin.
The world suffered a great loss when God came and took David Von Erich. I think with that in mind, the people that were his friends and the people that loved him suffered a greater loss when God took David Von Erich. And I guess nobody knows him like I knew him. I knew what he liked to eat for breakfast. I knew what made him happy. I knew what made him sad. And I fought the man in the ring that made him famous. And nobody fought him as hard as gorgeous Jimmy Garvin did.
So far, David has.
So this is the first of two clips, especially that are showing this point. It's very easy to tell by watching this show who David Von Erich's closest friends in wrestling are. And it leads to situations where we have to try to keep kayfabe while paying tribute to the man. And it gets bigger in on the next one we're going to play, but you know, Jimmy Garvin obviously is a friend of David Von Erich or was a friend of David Von Erich. And you could tell Precious was also beaten up over this because, Garvin and Precious are married in real life. And so they probably hung out quite a bit. And, this was tough. And, this was like, Harley Race, you know, it was nice to hear from him, the former world champion, who feuded with David for a bit. And it's like now we're getting to the point where it's like, okay, the people who really knew him are talking, and it's like this is where it starts starts sinking in. It starts getting heavy. Um, and I really liked it. I wish they were longer, but I mean, I don't know how much longer you could have gone without, killing the territory at this point.
Yeah. It
Um,
and I mean, if you want to do your own like making it like it's not that hard to say, well, maybe what do we know about Jimmy Garvin? We know that he studied his opponents. So maybe he paid really fucking close attention to David Von Erich's habits and likes and dislikes. He knew what his breakfast order was, so he could use that knowledge to figure out how to beat him. Like
there you
this
go.
is not like it's
They're not
not
showing,
that
they're not,
what's the
they're
word
not,
I'm looking
if this was 2025, they would have showed clips of Jimmy Garvin and David Von Erich eating breakfast together.
Right, right. This wasn't that.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, uh, it's still like you read between the lines a little bit here, and you can see how it is, and it's about to get worse. Well, worse in the sense that a
Worse
much
in a
better
lot of ways.
friend. Yeah. So we get clips of various matches involving the Freebirds and the Von Erichs, and I we don't show a finish. And I don't even know when either of these matches happen, except at one point Iceman Parsons is in there, and at one point he's not. So, it's
Yeah,
two entirely different matches.
I think that was the Von Erichs and Parsons against Freebirds and Garvin elimination match. Do you remember that one? I think that was that
Was
match.
it an elimination match, or was it the if you break the rule you go into the penalty box match?
No, no, I haven't seen the penalty box match. It was the
Oh,
elimination match.
you weren't here for the penalty box match?
No, no, I wasn't here for the penalty box match.
It wasn't as good as it sounds. Uh,
Was it better or worse than the one at WCW Sin?
I haven't watched that one in a long time, but it probably was just as good. Um,
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
it's the
valid.
inherent problem of a match like that. It's like you're calling rules infractions on things that you never call during a real match.
Right, right, yeah.
That's the issue with it. Um,
Because
so
wasn't that match like Lance Storm, Mike Awesome, and Elix Skipper against Billy Kidman and I don't know some filthy animals?
I'm pretty sure Konnan and Rey Mysterio, and
Yeah,
it
that
had
sounds
Jim
right.
Duggan as the referee.
Yes, yes, that's
And that was
yeah.
either right before or right after the Mike Awesome Konnan hair versus hair match.
I remember that. I remember that. That was so ridiculous.
Yes. At least they tried to cover it up because it was supposed to be Mike Awesome versus Billy Kidman. And then Kidman got attacked or whatever and was replaced by Konnan, who's bald. And they're like,
That
okay,
would
okay, motherfucker. It's like,
that would
it's still going to
suck
be Kidman's hair on the line.
if your hair was in the hands of Conan's wrestling ability.
Oh, boy. There's a reason why in TNA, Jerry Lynn is not wrestling Konnan every week. He's wrestling the luchador of the week that Konnan brings in.
I mean, Jerry Lynn loves his hair.
Yes, he does. Um, I bet he still does, even though his hair's cut off now. All right,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I teased this. Up next is the one that made me cry.
Okay.
Michael Hayes. This one actually made me cry legitimately while watching this. Let's go to Michael Hayes, who's going to talk about his hated rival.
I guess literally thousands of people, media and everybody, have been asking us our reaction to the tragedy, what happened to David Von Erich. This will be our only public statement about it. And I guess really the only thing to say is it was a tragedy, because obviously his family and his friends and those that loved him suffered a great deal more than we did. But we feel a loss too, because we've lost a great warrior. And I know that might be hard to accept coming from us because we fought him so many times. But the one thing that he did do is he fought what he believed in. And even though what we believe in never agreed, and it never will, You have to respect somebody that fights what they believe for. And he always fought what he believed for. And it's a shame. And it is a tragedy. But I can't sit here and tell you that the feud will end between the Von Erichs and the Freebirds. It never will end because there's only room for one of us here.
So yeah, that uh that one really hit me in the feelings when I watched that.
Um, I gotta tell you, give me 1 second. I'm having a very minor area. Also almost cried during the segment. Uh, he always fought what he believed for. Michael Hayes' grammar is fucking atrocious.
Sure, leave it to you to turn a sad moment into a discussion of grammar.
Oh,
But yeah, it's like it's so obvious, like
yeah,
they're friends,
yeah.
and he's paying tribute to his friend, and he has to do it completely in kayfabe. And man, I like it really hit me in the feelings. And this is also when I noticed that it's all heels. Like Flair's coming
Uh,
up,
yeah,
and
like why aren't we hearing from King Parsons or Brian Diaz or
I
Kelly
wrote,
Kaniski?
well, we wanted people to stay awake for the show. Um, but like the only person who isn't a heel wrestler to do a tribute is fucking David Manning. And honestly, like knowing, because like as much as we rip on David Manning for being a biased referee, he legitimately is also a friend of the family. And so I guess if you're gonna have somebody pay tribute, he was as good a choice as any. And I mean, I guess like because I thought about it too, because I wrote down, well, why isn't Iceman taking? I'm like, well, they may not have really been close at all, like, and it could have come off across as very fake. Whereas on this show, even when you have Harley Race and Ric Flair, they both came off as real, like they really knew him, even if it was just, you know, when they would show up in the territory once every couple months, you know.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's
From
true.
here, from here they show the Flair David match from Christmas '83, which was a microphone to the head finish where David Manning reluctantly DQ'd Flair. And I gotta say, did you watch any of these matches outside of the opener? I'd fast forwarded through everything.
Uh, yeah, me too, pretty much.
Um, so we're gonna go now to Ric Flair, and that's gonna seg right into David Manning, and that's gonna be the last tribute before we get to the main event of this show.
Let us count. Professional difference has kept me from ever knowing David Von Erich on any other level except through athletic competition. But he was a tremendous competitor, a tremendous man, and I'm the world heavyweight champion, and I'm telling you, I have nothing but respect for the memory of David Von Erich. I can tell you right now, he was close to being the world heavyweight champion. With or without the world heavyweight championship, he died a champion, and he will always be remembered as a champion.
David Von Erich, as a person and as a wrestler, was a true champion. I refereed more matches of David Von Erich than probably any other referee in professional wrestling. His talents, he had a great gift, and he knew how to take it to its fullest. This is a great tragedy for professional wrestling. You know, a life goes on, but in the people's hearts, in my heart, and especially anyone that's a Texan, they're going to remember David Von Erich for what he was, a true champion.
Okay, so yeah, two more very touching tributes, and Flair was a little more in character than anybody else, but still, you can tell he's speaking from the heart.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
David Manning, he lost a friend himself, and I imagine like he wasn't on last week's show, right? Yeah, because they had on different referees, and it's like it's going to be hard for these people to come back to work because Hayes wasn't on last week's show. I don't think Jimmy Garvin was on last week's show because they did Chris Adams versus Max. So it's like, the people who were the closest to David, like, they weren't, I don't think they've wrestled or been around since then. And so it's going to be difficult for them probably to get back into it, but they're probably going to realize that they need to. Like, whenever Kerry and Kevin come back on, it's like, you know, it's that you kind of have to do it kind of thing. And, if you don't do it, if you don't do it once, you're never going to be able to do it kind of thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, so from here, up next, before we even get to the main event, the next segment, the next Mercer comment was a little, I don't say weird, but it was more real than all of these world champion talks because Mercer starts talking about um how David, how David had a dream, how David had heroes growing up. And I started writing because, the theme of this show is David Von Erich is, a world champion that never happened. And so I started writing out, and David Von Erich's dream was to one day be the world heavyweight champion. And that's not what Bill Mercer said. Bill Mercer said that it was David Von Erich's dream to be a cowboy and to be a ranch hand. And they showed a lot of video and footage of David riding horses, and they showed him as a child on horses. And to me, that 1 minute screamed more real than every comment about him being the world champion did on this entire show.
Yeah, it was very, very authentic, very personal. And this was one I don't know if it was like the same clips, but they played a David video like a month or two ago. That was the production music that it was set to. It was this song, "Bad Karma Cowboy" is the title of the track, and it's so eerie, and then it's even eerier that the title was "Bad Karma Cowboy" when that was they played that a few weeks before he died.
Yeah. And I remember us talking about it on the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Mercer, I didn't write down exactly what he said, but I liked his line. He said, "In times of great loss, we gain strength and faith and family," which, I thought that was a good line.
Yeah.
Okay. So up next is a segment. Well, there's two halves to this segment. And I'm just going to play the first half and then come back when we talk about it and then go to the second half. It's Fritz von Erich, and he's outside at the lake with his wife, Doris. Harry, Kevin, and Mike are there, and so is Chris. Lance didn't make an appearance. Lance didn't come down for his cousin's funeral. Son of a bitch. And this is where it starts getting weird. And this is the first half. I mean, this is honestly the part that everyone thinks of. This is that moment. But there's more to it afterwards. But let's play the first half. Fritz with the rest of his family on the lake.
David Von Erich.
Well, he's in a better place, and no question about that. The big help is knowing that he is there. Signed up till about 5 or 6 years ago, I would have said I knew he was there. But there's a little more doubt in my mind. It's not there any longer. It hasn't been for a couple of years. All this is done now is just made me realize that your mom and I and all you guys, we're going to all be joining David up there sometime. All together. Fellas, really, we passed through this life. It's just a proverbial drop in the ocean compared to a sea of eternity. It's just like a minute or two in the Lord's conception of time. Yeah. And we're put here to find him, and then the eternity starts when we get with him. Old Dave's already there. It's all a matter of how you look at it. That's all. All we can do, fellas, is remember the great memories we have. We had Old Dave for a long time, 25 years. It was a great 25 years. As Brother McComb said the other day at the service, he did 75 years of living in that 25 years. He really did.
Yeah, he lived a lifetime. 25 years.
Yeah. Michael, you're the one that looks most like old David.
Yes.
It's amazing about that short hair trigger temper you got just under that shirt. You never control that.
You know, I'll tell you.
Kind of learned to do. You're going to go a long way in this business, son.
You know, Dad, all these darn wrestling magazines were going on about how Dave is the most vicious man in professional wrestling, and Mike is a splitting image of Dave, and he has your qualities, that aggressiveness, and you know, like Kerry and I were talking about earlier today, Dave wanted that world championship more than anything in the world, and that world championship is going to be around the Von Erich waist. It has to be, not only for our family, for Dave.
Son, it's going to be a memorial to David, and I have no question. You're all three, at some point in your professional lives, going to have the world title. It's a question now of which of you two is going to be the next world champion.
Either one of us is okay with me.
Yeah, it's one of us. And you know, when we go into that ring, we want to be the #1 contender. We don't want there to be any doubt in anyone's mind that we are the best and that we should be the world champion. And there won't be.
That's right, baby. You know, there's a lot of people to beat because when you go, you don't want any question. You are the #1 contender. So when you take that title, there's no question in anybody's mind in the world that you are the best that there is and the best there ever was.
Okay. I'm trying, and it gets worse with the next segment because from here they're going to go to commercial and come back. I'm trying to give Fritz the benefit of the doubt to some degree, just because to us this is the first public statement that the Von Erich family have made. So to us, it should be a little bit more, let's focus on David as a person. Let's focus on paying tribute and remembering the memory of this great athlete, this great person, this great wrestler, and worry about the world title at a future date. Instead, it goes almost immediately into, David was so close to being the world champion. And it's like, oh, yeah, all three of you are going to win. And one of you two are going to win it now as tribute to David in memory of him. And the only defense I can make to it, and this is a very weak defense because I'm going to come up with the argument later as to like the opposite of this, is that it's been a month. It's been a month since David died. And you don't like, obviously they're not over it. That's a weird thing to say, but it's like it's no longer, it didn't just happen yesterday. You know, they've had a month now to kind of come to grips with it before doing this promo. Because that's what this is. This is a promo. This is not, a tribute, a memorial to David. This is a promo building up to a world title match. And that's where it gets icky and, just creepy.
Okay, I'm gonna have to explain something, and the people who have this lived experience will understand exactly what I'm talking about. As someone who grew up in the Bible Belt, who from a very early age just did not buy any of it, I cannot help. It's an ingrained for decades. It's an ingrained like preservation technique. As soon as somebody starts talking like that, I dripped off and stopped listening.
So up next, and that's bad enough. But up next, Bill Mercer earns his paycheck because everyone else leaves. And it's just Bill Mercer and Fritz von Erich sitting on the bench talking about David. And Bill Mercer is basically there to keep things on point and try to not to not to curb the obsession over the world title. Because honestly, like I'm trying to be nice about this. I really am. But my immediate thought is, how soon after David's death did Fritz think to himself, I can use this to get the world title for one of my boys?
On the walk back into the house from meeting David Manning outside when Manning came to tell him the call to Japan. That's when he thought of it.
Like, you hate to say it, you're probably not that far off. Like, and this is one of the things in the Iron Claw, and there's a lot of things to hate about that movie. But one of the things they really, get is that Fritz was so fucking obsessed with getting the world title from when he was a wrestler to when now he's got three boys, in wrestling. His obsession with being the world champion or having the world championship in the family killed his family.
Yeah.
And
That's a true
Bill
statement.
Mercer, we're going to go to this. It's like 8 minutes long, so take a deep seat. It's 8 minutes long. It's Bill Mercer with Fritz, and Mercer is going to do his damnedest to keep this thing as light as possible, to keep this as much off of the world title as he can. And you're going to see Fritz constantly go back to it. And like I said, Mercer's going to earn his paycheck here. But let's go to this right now.
Fritz, I appreciate your taking the time, visiting with us here where David grew up. I guess he was practically born here, wasn't he?
Yes, Bill, he was. Old Dave was almost 4 years old when we moved out here, and this is his life right here. Dave was raised right on this place.
I think we always saw the personality of David in the outdoor, the farm, the ranch situation. I'm sure he learned all that here. He grew into the country.
That's right. He loved the outdoors. These boys were raised hunting and fishing and farming and gardening and raising hay, loading hay. It's just a great way to bring these youngins up.
One of the things that we keep being asked by all the fans who are concerned, and sincerely concerned, as we've seen, is what happens to the Von Erichs now? It is as though this would put an end to something, but actually, from what I gather from you, this is only a beginning.
Well, there's no question about it. It amazes me. Some of the fans think, boy, David is gone. What are they going to do? Hey, David's been an integral part of our lives, no question about that. Right. We loved him to death. His mother and I and his brothers. But David is gone and life does go on. I tell you, Bill, if I hadn't been a Christian and my children and my family, this would have been extremely hard. And it was. It was a terrible shock to us. But when it comes right down to it, brother, we know where David is. A few years ago, I probably couldn't tell you I know for sure where he is. I do now. I can tell you I know where he is. Thank God he's born again. But he's up there feeling sorry for us, Bill. We have to remember that this life that we go through, this short period of time in eternity, it's like a drop in the ocean of eternity.
What they say, borrowed time.
That's right. It's just a short period of time. We go on in and, we'll finally join David there. Meanwhile, as I said, life goes on. Now, these boys, you got to remember that mic is coming on strong. And if there ever was an image of someone, it's Mike. When you look at him, he looks exactly like David. These childhood pictures, Bill, we look back into this day at the same age. I can't tell David from Mike. Yeah. And the odd thing is, it's the disposition and the talent, the wrestling and athletic talent that's there. Mike will, after a couple of years, he will step into David's category. So when you ask me, does life go on? What are we going to do without Dave? We're going to miss him, and we'll never forget David. It's like the wind. His name will go on, because when you look at my sons, you're looking at people that now will become totally and completely awesome, because these boys have decided they're all three going to be world champions, and one of them, Kevin or Kerry, will be the next world champion, because now they plan to do it as a memorial to their brother David. Bill, I don't know if you realize it, but the world heavyweight title was the biggest thing in David's life, aside from Jesus Christ now. And he now is not with us, but his brothers are. And when I say you're going to see awesome people out there, there's a bunch of folks they've got to beat, because when the time comes, they do want to be the very best when they go in that ring for the World Heavyweight Championship. So that when they come out with that belt, in David's memory, this is what's going to make it a situation that's just going to be unbelievable. They're going for their brother. It's all for David. They will, one of them will be the next world champion. I have no question about it. Our lives will be dedicated to that from here on.
Going back just a little bit, the outpouring around the nation and around the world. We knew David was popular. We knew the Von Erichs were popular. Were you even surprised at this tremendous outpouring of real sympathy that came and memorial to David?
Bill, I was surprised with the numbers of the flowers. You know, everything in this area, from North Dallas to Louisville to Denton, there wasn't a flower left. Mm-hmm. They all sent them for David. And yes, I was surprised at the turnout. But one thing that helped all of my family in a tremendous way was a Christian warmth and love and respect that was displayed literally by thousands of fans that came to the church where the service was. And
I think respect is the real word.
Respect, that's right. Respect for the way things were, and it was just so touching. I'll never in my life forget these fans. We considered, a closed service, private service. But these fans David belonged to the fans just like he belonged to his family. And we could never have done that, and I just thank the Lord that we went ahead and had an open service so that the people that made David and the people that loved him could come and be a part of all this. And David would have loved it. He loved his fans. Anyway, brother, we're going to miss David, no question about that. He's, as I've said before, Bill, when you take a child, even when you have other children, when you lose that child, at that time, he's the only child that you have. It's our second son, that we've lost, our oldest boy. And there's some consolation there, too, because David was only 2 years old when Jackie died. And there's no question he's with Jack right now. And I'm sure Jack's showing him around. I've made a lot of mistakes raising my children, Bill, like I'm sure other people have. One mistake I didn't make, I kicked their tails when they needed kicking. And when I told them something, that's the way it was. But I loved them to death. And I used to worry about making sissies out of them, because to this day, if I want to grab that Kevin or that Kerry or that David and hug and kiss them, man, nobody ever called me a sissy, and I don't think they will for that.
Everybody said that David was one of the greatest, toughest competitors, maybe the toughest they'd ever met, but also one of the politest, sincerest people they've ever known, and you can certainly be proud of that.
And I'm proud of that, and I'm proud of that boy. The Lord gave him to us for 25 years, Bill, and they're 25 glorious years.
Such a short time, but
well, it's a
great time.
Yeah, brother, but one of the ministers at the service stated to the folks there that, David did a lot of living that 25 years, probably 100 years worth, and he did.
That was a joyful service. I didn't feel depressed at all. I felt sorry for David, but I felt really good because, as you said, there is more to this.
That's right, Bill. Let me tell you why precisely you felt good. Young Gary Holder, who's a really up-and-coming evangelist and has done a tremendous amount of good for David and Kevin and Kerry's spiritual life as well as mine. Gary was one of the ministers there, and Gary made heaven seem so real. I mean, we just stopped crying. Yeah. Because, boy, when he painted that picture, he was so firm in his mind, hey, David's up there. He's feeling sorry for us here. Yeah. And he spent all his time praising God. And, brother, with the way Gary presented that, it was just tremendous. And it painted that firm picture in my mind I'll never forget. And he's just a wonderful guy, and Gary could be another Billy Graham someday. He's just that good. He's the Lord's man. Anyway, Bill, brother, you're welcome anytime. The last time you were here, you recall we were shooting ducks over there.
Yeah, we were David and I.
Yeah,
and
you,
Kevin.
David, and Kevin, and Kerry, and myself, and I don't believe you killed anything, but...
well, I can't hit the side of the wall, but, you know.
Well, the problem was you shot in the wrong direction. The ducks were the other way.
Thank you, Fritz.
Thank you, Bill. You rascal. We've been together a long time, haven't we, partner?
25 years, then. Back when you looked, we both looked young.
Okay. And Bill Mercer, again, the MVP of this show, of World Class in general. It's like, he made Fritz look as good as Fritz was going to look here. And you could tell how hard that was because Fritz was of a one-track mind. And it's unfortunate, and I don't want to say it cheapens David's death, but it's like in some ways it cheapens David's death because we're not talking about, we're kind of talking about what a great guy David Von Erich was, but we're more concentrating on what can we get out of David's death than David. Like I'm saying I'm trying to give Fritz the benefit of the doubt because it has to be so fucking tough to lose your child because you're not supposed to bury your children, you know, and he's now had to bury two of them. But even though it's been a month, and like I said, we're trying to give him the benefit of the doubt because it has been a month. It wasn't just yesterday, and now he's coming on TV and doing this interview. It's still the first interview after David's death. This should not have been the interview talking about being world champion. This should have just have been them, like all these other stories you've heard, because you heard them tell all these stories about David throughout the show. That's what this interview should have been. And this should have been about how they just love and miss their son and their brother, and then give it 2 weeks. Give it 2 weeks. Come back, on March 17th or whatever, and that's when you do the promo saying, Kevin and Kerry win a tag match, and now they're cutting a promo that, you know what, I've had some time to think about it. Now I want to wrestle. We've made a decision that one of us is going to be the next world champion in tribute to our brother David because he was so close to winning the belt. And now we're going to use the strength that this is giving us to put us over the top here. And we're not getting that. We're getting the David's dead. How can I get the world title, promo?
I think it speaks well of you as a person that you're even willing to consider giving Fritz the benefit of the doubt.
I guess because I can picture that he has to be going through a tough time. And maybe this is his way of trying to cope with it. But he has to realize how daft he looks. Like he could have edited any of this off of the television show. They did not have to air Fritz von Erich talking about how important it was for the kids to win the world title now that David's dead.
This is the first hint that I know of the long term is gonna really turn these fans off to the wrestling and the territory and the family.
Yeah. Because, this is the first chink in the armor. This is, like the first death, I don't say they forgave the Von Erichs because, but they accepted it and moved on. But then who's next? Mike? So Mike is going to have toxic shock syndrome. Then we're going to have Lance. Then Mike's going to die. Then they're going to go on TV and say that Lance is a fake Von Erich and that we've copyrighted this name and yada, yada, yada. And then I remember one of the stories I heard that I don't think they go into on the History of World Class DVD is after Mike commits suicide, they changed the name of the Texas Stadium show to the David and Mike Von Erich Memorial Show. And that really turned a lot of people off.
Yeah.
And it was just one thing after another that exposed the family. And Gary Hart said something in one of the DVDs. He's like, "Why aren't we concentrating on positive things? Let's try to make this a positive. Let's do something good, and give the fans happy thoughts and happy memories. Why are we concentrating on negative so much?" And yeah,
Great question. That.
um, and it's like obviously the peak of world class is 8 weeks away, 7 weeks away, give or take.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm honestly like I'm morbidly curious on the next 8 weeks of world class TV because
Well,
you know, like
at
this is
least
week one in the build to Kerry Von Erich's world title win, and you get the feeling that it's not going to get much better.
there's finally something to care about on the show.
Yeah, I guess. Um, but yeah. So, um, I've noted this. I am a walking, talking tear duct. I will cry at the drop of a hat about anything as long as you give me a half decent reason. I'm always up for a good cry. Fritz dried up those tears so fast, it wasn't even funny. Um,
Wow.
and like Mercer, like I'm not a religious person, and I zone a lot of that stuff out too. But I like that Mercer kept trying to bring it around to how nice the service was, and how the pastor who presided over it, like he made it not a joyous event, but you know he made it a memorable event, and he turned a negative into a positive, and he made David dying sound better than it was because he talked about how great heaven was and described it in such a way that everyone stopped crying and they just smiled because that's where David is now. And that was nice. And I can
Yeah,
imagine that
yeah, yeah.
that I bet that played really well into, Texas, and I bet that would probably still work today.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But it's just the whole it's David exploitation, you know?
It is.
Thankfully
It
we're
is.
thankfully we're not in a lowrider being backed into the SmackDown set as tribute to David, but it's still exploitation. And there are positive ways to do that. Like you can pay tribute to David and not have him become a central character on the show, you know. But yeah, and it's
He already was the central character on the show.
yeah. So yeah, what were your thoughts on this whole Fritz interview?
Uh, I just I knew that this was a fairly notorious Fritz promo, and knowing how scummy Fritz gets, I watched this and was like, "What's the big deal?"
Yeah. It's almost like it's become too famous. Like,
Yeah,
everyone knows the story even if you've never seen it. It's like,
right.
and but it's like what like when you already know that Fritz is this scummy person that,
Because
it's like, it
because we're
you just know it and expect.
isn't it the May Texas Stadium show when he
Yeah,
has David Manning signing David Von Erich 8x10s?
I honestly don't think I knew that.
Oh, you didn't know that story? Oh yeah, like fairly early, and I think it's for the May Texas Stadium show that Fritz had David Manning sign David Von Erich's name to a bunch of 8x10s to sell.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh, I can't believe you didn't know that.
If I did, I blocked it out of my memory.
Yeah.
That is just
See, that's the threshold for me of Fritz von Erich's gumminess. And like this didn't reach the threshold for me.
ew. Like ew.
I'm
I'm
sorry.
just
I'm sorry. I thought you knew. I didn't mean to ruin your
I,
fucking dinner.
I mean I probably knew, but I mean again, I dealing with decades of wrestling scumminess, that one somehow slipped my mind. That's just ew. That,
It's fair, yeah.
I just love that he had to have David Manning do it. You know,
Of course. Of course. Who else?
well, there are many people in the house whose last name is allegedly Von Erich.
Well,
You know,
maybe David Manning had the best penmanship. He's got to be good at
I,
something, right?
I don't doubt that, to be honest. Um, and you have to wonder though, like David Von Erich, and I've always kind of wondered this. Like everyone talks about, oh, David was going to be the next world champion. I don't believe for one second David would have gotten a real world title reign. I'm, in fact, I'm willing to bet money that he would have gotten a Tommy Rich title reign. He would have gotten a couple weeks,
Yeah,
and that was that. And
I think
like,
you're right.
because that's the thing. It's like it's not just that oh, everyone gets the world title. It's that whoever's the world champion now has to go to all these different territories and draw as the champion. And Ric Flair was that person. Like you could not have put the title on anybody else
Right,
as a long-term champion at this point.
right.
You
And
know,
this comes up with both the NWA title and the WWF title in the 80s. Was that the kids who have grown up in the last 20 years in the you deserve it era are always like, "Whoa, Roddy Piper should have got a world title reign or fucking whoever the fuck." It is like when? Like yeah, Roddy Piper's
yeah,
great. At what
yeah.
point would having Roddy Piper as the world champion have done more business than having Hulk Hogan as the world champion at that time?
Or Ric Flair. You
Exactly.
know,
And look, David,
and
like in all fairness to David, like David had been the one who like they sent him to Florida to learn how to like get some experience actually like working healed and really, and then he's a regular going back and forth to St. Louis, which is I've noticed
hmm
previously. That's like the capital of the NWA. It's like the two
hmm
biggest wrestling cities in North America are New York and St. Louis. So
hmm
they really are like David was being groomed as a potential world champion. And we don't know like maybe 1986 things are different and it makes sense to we don't know. We don't
hmm
know, but like we know it wasn't going to happen that year probably.
But like the final reason why, like especially Piper didn't get the world title or even considered for it, he was the only person that ever refused to lose to Hogan, and he got away with it. But it makes you think at the end of the day, well, even if Vince thought about it, even as a, let's go, you know, January to February with the title on Piper. How does he know that Piper is going to lose the belt in February since the guy has refused to do a job to everybody already?
Yeah. And based
And
Roddy Piper by the way.
and we talked about a few weeks ago, as I mentioned, the Rockers. Everyone talks about, oh, the Rockers should have gotten the tag team titles. When? Like by the time they actually should have gotten the tag titles, it was actually time for them to break up in
Yeah.
late
Yeah.
91. Like like it's easy, like you can't sit here and say, "Oh, they deserve the titles more than Demolition." They really didn't. That wasn't the air that wouldn't have worked at the time. You know, like Arn and Tully like were small, but they were, you know, I don't know, like it's hard to say, but they were bigger. Like they were something. Like they got the belts. I don't know, whatever fucking reason you want to give it here. But like the Rockers should not have gotten the belts over Demolition. They should not have gotten the belts over the Hart Foundation. They should, like, it wasn't their time. They were the right team in the wrong time. And, you know, and
Was
Arn Anderson never was going to be world champion. Love Arn Anderson. He's a great promo. He's a great wrestler. But in the great pantheon of people who should have gotten the world title, Arn Anderson was never going to be a serious consideration.
was Tully Blanchard just such a fantastic asshole that you never really thought about how comparatively smaller he was?
Yes. There's some people that work much bigger than they are, and Tully Blanchard was one of them. And
Yeah, and it tend like Buddy Roberts. Watch Buddy Roberts work on this show. Like, he's a little fucking asshole, but like it's part of why what he does works. Because he's just that little fucking rat chihuahua motherfucker that's always gonna bite at your ankles.
Yep.
I compared Terry Taylor to a saltine and Buddy Roberts to a chihuahua. Great show.
I know. And we've gone 2.5 hours. So
Really?
I think
oh Lord.
2 hours 20 minutes actually.
I apologize,
I think,
I think.
It's all good at this point. So I think it's time to wrap things up here. So I'm assuming next week goes back to normal for World Class. I haven't watched the show yet, but I'm assuming it does. And we'll see how it goes. We'll see if David Von Erich becomes the top star in the company now that he's dead, even more so than he was when he was alive.
I thought you were going to say we're going to see if David Von Erich stays dead or not.
He probably will. He probably will. We might have to take a drink next week every time somebody says David Von Erich.
There we go. We'll be hammered.
Yeah. All right. So that's gonna do it for this week's show. Listen to the oh my God, what the hell's the name of your show? Listen to the Oh My God cast.
Oh my God, yeah, the Oh My God cast.
Yes. Listen to that too. Thank you all. I know
if you didn't listen to it, and you can actually watch it because Arya took the time to sync it up. Our commentary over the Omni house show that WWE Vault just put up. Go watch that.
It's fantastic. You know, I know we joked about this earlier, but seriously, thank you to everybody who's been checking us out.
Yeah.
I don't know why all of a sudden people are checking us out, but hey, maybe it's only a 1 week blip. So we'll be thankful for the 1 week blip, but hope you all enjoyed what you hear. Hope you continue to enjoy what you hear. Thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you again in 7 days.
Bye.